This event and the address I gave earlier today to a few thousand people at the entrepreneurship conference were meant to benefit the Prince's Trust and the work our foundation does. So I want to thank the ambassadors from the Prince's Trust who are here. Thank you, my longtime friend Kevin Spacey. Horse just comes up and speaks for me, and if you close your eyes, nobody knows it's not me. In fact, as he has repeatedly said, he is a better me than me is. Thank you, David Furnish, the Elton John Foundation has been. We saved a lot of lives together around the world. It's one of the best foundations. Thank you. Trudy and Sting and I were once honored. I was honored, I think, for being there to honor them. But I have to tell you that the real test of this work we do is whether we're still doing it 10 years later or 20 years later. And there has been no more faithful protector of the rainforest, the biodiversity, the culture, and the people who live in the rainforest and save it for the rest of us than you. Thank you. I want to thank Damian Lewis for his support of the Prince's Trust and for giving every American the chills once a week in a remarkable and enlightening way. I want to talk a little bit tonight, and literally a little bit, because a lot of you were there today. But the world is going through a difficult time. The wealthy countries of the world all have wonderful to live the lives that have brought us all into these neat chairs tonight. Right? And that's a good thing. We're just kind of stuck right now. We got to break out of them and create a new reality. Don't make the mistakes we made before and unleash the energy and the creativity of our people. The poor countries of the world, in which many of us work, they don't have any of the stuff we're taking for granted right this minute. I find it's useful to start every speech. Just think of the things you're taking for granted. You'd be shocked if the air conditioning went off, if the lights failed, if the microphone went out. You might be happy if the microphone went out, but you'd be surprised. If you're totally bored with my speech, you can excuse yourself and go to the loo or get a glass of water, and you're not afraid to drink the water. I spend a lot of my life in places where people can't take any of that for granted. Those places have to build systems that make predictable good behavior have predictable positive consequences. And it's not easy to do, but it's worthy work. And that's the work that governments and non-government organizations do in the developing world. In wealthy countries, we have systems, and they always atrophy. They have since the Sumerian civilization 8,000 years ago. And they atrophy for very good reasons, because they work for a long time. And they build up a lot of support. And they give out a lot of benefits. And at some point, people become more interested in holding on to their position than advancing the purposes for which their institutions were established. More interested in clinging to present gains and setting aside just a little bit of it to risk on a brighter future. And the only societies that endure are those that stay in the future business. We're always thinking about the children and the grandchildren. I believe the whole 21st century story, which I still believe will be the best story ever written, depends on how we relate to each other, how we relate to this incredible explosion of technology, and how we relate to the planet that is our home. And if we mess up either one of those things, really bad things can happen. And if we do a decent job in all three, unbelievable opportunities will explode everywhere. We know, and what I try to do in my foundation is basically try to build up the positive and reduce the negative forces of global interdependence. Less inequality, less instability, less unsustainability because of climate change, and more opportunities. And I try to figure out how to help do it faster, cheaper, better. And one thing every citizen of the UK should be really proud of, at least I hope you are, is whatever your politics are. And you know, I work very closely with Tony Blair. Gordon Brown's been a friend of mine for 20 years. Every time I can meet some of these new Labour members, I do. That's where my politics are. But I am profoundly grateful to your current Prime Minister for going through this terrible economic time, adopting an economic policy that I think is not necessarily the best. That is, I think this austerity now business is a mistake because interest rates are below inflation. So I think what governments with big future debts, including the United States, should do is to adopt 10-year debt reduction plans that trigger when government interest rates start to rise, so you keep interest rates down and you get more growth. Notwithstanding, the one thing you've got to give Prime Minister Cameron is this. He refused to cut the foreign assistance that the United Kingdom gives to poor countries, to try to build a more united world and give people who feel left out and left behind their chance. And every citizen of this country should support that and be proud of it. And one of the things that I have enjoyed most is that the Department of International Development asked our foundation to work with them to do what we love to do, try to find ways to do things faster, cheaper, better, to bring sort of entrepreneurial ideas to this. And we just were part of an amazing announcement, your minister and I, and others at the UN not very long ago, that we are going to bring implantable contraceptives to 27 million women in the developing world for 1/2 the cost it was formerly available. This will save enormous numbers of lives. It will enable genuine family planning. It is an empowerment issue for women and girls. And we are helping exactly the same number of people as the UK meant to help for essentially half the price. That is the kind of thing that we're going to have to do more of in the current circumstances. Our foundation also has worked with DFID on, I guess something I have a hard time discussing if we'd already started eating, which is that 1 million kids under 5 die of diarrhea every year. And millions more are desperately threatened and hanging life. So my daughter just went to Nigeria to announce another partnership that DFID is a part of that will enable us all over Africa to get oral rehydration therapy and salt cheap for 50 cents a person a treatment in a way that will, over the next few years, save 200,000 of those lives for less money, because the British taxpayers have supported, across their partisan differences, a decent budget to try to help poor people around the world. And then your government has been kind enough to work with me and with others to find an entrepreneurial way to keep saving more and more lives with the same amount of money. And I think you should all think about that. When I worked with the Elton John Foundation, because of the money they put in to building up healthcare systems and fighting AIDS, they were able to make maximum use of the fact that we took the price of generic AIDS medicine from $500 to $90 a year. And then when finally we got one pill instead of 3, we got it under $200 now. Same amount of money, more lives saved. If we really care about empowering the poor and giving them education and economic development, then we have to keep driving healthcare costs down so as to put more money into empowering them to take care of themselves so they do not need us anymore. That's what we should all want. That's what the best people do, raising their own children. And they are all our children. So I just wanted you to think about that. There's a great deal of talk about entrepreneurship. I think we need social empowerment for self-sustaining reforms and to create in every country the kind of constituency for the future represented by this astonishing commitment of the British government to maintain its involvement with people around the world. We live in an interdependent world. You look at the modern world and you see it is based on what is in people's heads. And what is in the people's heads directs what the energy of their body does. And every time you take another body off the table, it is a severe constraint on the possibilities that the children, the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren yet to be born will have wherever they live. So that is our job. And believe it or not, doing it for me is a lot of fun. People ask me, why do you do this all the time? You could be out doing X, Y, or Z. I said, yeah, but I'm not very good at X, Y, or Z. And I was raised in a Calvinist household. I'd be consumed with guilt if I did it. And besides, this is so much fun. So I urge you to have this kind of fun. And tonight, before you go to bed, thank God you live in a country where the government, whatever your differences, said we will not reduce our commitment to the least of these on this planet. Thank you very much.